Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report Spotlight. Today we have a returning guest, Bob Kudla. Bob is the creator and owner of TradeGeniusAcademy.com, and I am very happy to have him back on the X22 Report Spotlight. Bob, welcome back to the Spotlight.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming back. And let's talk about this stimulus bill because it's been stuck in Congress. It's not moving, and it seems that the D's are throwing everything they possibly can into it. And this is what I think. I think it should be very simple. It should just help the people, period. Why do you think this isn't getting any movement? Why do you think this is taking such a long time if Congress is supposed to be working for the people?
Yeah, I think, the Democrats don't do anything that's not a political calculation. So my initial view is that they thought maybe the people would blame Trump more than they would blame the Democrats for it. And number two is that they're constantly trying to mollify their radical base. So they throw everything in there. And plus, they probably want to see if, what sticks. And then Trump just kind of held firm on them. And now they're kind of stuck because they're in the election season. They don't want to show that they're giving in to Trump. But I think this new group that showed up, kind of like almost like a get it done centrist kind of group emerging out of the House, may eventually see some resolution to this. But on the good news side is that, with all this free money for people that were sitting at home going away, forcing people back into the economy and also forcing these Democrat lockdown states and cities to actually start giving in because people are like, hey, I need a job. And, you saw California kind of turn on the dime and some of these other states are starting to relent now because people need to work. They're not getting unemployment insurance. And then they're looking at their state tax revenues and like, OMG, we're going to go bankrupt. So I think it was a political game that the Democrats are going to lose once again. Nancy threw the same stuff at every stimulus package since, March or April, and she's gotten it 0% of the time.
Yeah, that is true. So, do you think this is going to have a negative effect on the economy if it doesn't go through? I know you said that, this might help with people saying, something, I need to go back to work because I have no money coming in. So you think this is going to be a positive effect on the economy?
Yeah, I think, whatever's going to happen is I think we'll get some sort of stimulus at some point, but it sure does not seem to be hurting. And, I don't know, maybe you and I kind of live in weird parts of the world, but in California, things are rocking here, and the restaurants are as full as they're allowed to be. Any kind of personal services work you want to get done, from like construction to, car painting or anything like that, they're 2, 3, 4 weeks behind. You can't get any appliances in. So I just think that the economy will go back to full employment once we get these governments out of the way. So the stimulus may not have as an impact as it as probably first thought, but I think it'll be helpful when it happens.
You know what I did notice is that when I've been around in different states and things like that, the states that really haven't locked down, people are just going about their business. They're not really wearing masks. They're going to bars, to restaurants, and they're very lax with the masks because they're like, nothing's happening here. So what's the big deal? And I think those states, like you said, like California and New York, where the governors and certain mayors have locked down the state and the city, they're the ones who are going to be hurting in the end. And you don't see the federal funds flowing into those states. So they're going to really be hurting. And I don't think it's going to work out for them. And the people are going to notice this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Unless the Democrats do a clean sweep in the election, the states that decided to play politics with this virus are going to be in deep weeds. And they're not going to have the revenue and they're not going to impose taxes on people because people will simply just up and leave. You already could see it. They have these prices in and out of with U-Haul to different cities around the country. And, you could just see the exodus out of the 3 western states into the Intermountain region. So people are not opposed to picking up and leaving, especially if their jobs don't come back or if they're going to start getting heavy taxes. people are going to like, hey, you know what? California's nice, but I can make a better living in Utah, Arizona, Montana, Idaho. And believe it or not, like South Dakota is getting a lot of interest now because of its tax status. And people are discovering Western South Dakota is pretty darn beautiful. So I think it's going to be really interesting here how it's going to play out. I think secular moves have happened here, and I don't think it's playing out the way the progressives thought it was going to play out.
Also, when you think about this, when the elections, since they're coming up and people moving out into different states, the certain mayors and governors are losing their base in that state and they're moving to different parts of the country. And this is not going to play well with what they have planned, where they're trying to, of course, win the election or create chaos or whatever with the mail-in ballots. So I see that completely falling apart for them.
Oh, I agree, and I think President Trump probably has a plan there. They're watching all this stuff. They'll literally validate every piece of mail that comes in, or they're going to get judges to just say this is it's unknowable who these people are, so these ballots won't count at all. And then you're going to need to come in and vote in person if you want your vote to count. So, I just think that's probably going to blow up in their face too.
I think so too. Now, what's very interesting is the Fed came out and they said that the rates are not going to change. They're going to keep them exactly the way they are. And a lot of people thought they were going to maybe raise them or do something, but nothing happened. Why do you think they're just keeping it status quo right now?
Well, they have to. I mean, if they raised interest rates now, you would see probably the mortgage markets collapse. You would see the commercial lending markets collapse, and just about half the S&P 500 would have negative income because they have so much debt on their books. Look, we're debt saturated, and they're going to have to keep the rates down. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing the 10-year yield get back down to 0%. I think it's around 0.7, something like that right now, and then there'll be talk about negative rates. They have to keep reducing the cost of carrying the debt load that the country has in order to not go into a depression. And so he just said today, hey, it's going to be 3 years. And what they want people to do is to lock in these low long-term rates. And then they're going to create inflation, Dave. And they're going to try to recreate like what happened in the 70s. They're going to bring the jobs back in from China and from wherever. They're going to raise wages for people. They're going to create wage inflation, and everything's going to be locked into low long-term rates. And then that's I think the game plan going into the next 10 years. They have to get through the next 10 to 12 years to pay off the pensions, and so they're just going to keep everything as loose as possible to keep the asset prices engaged and raised so they can get through the baby boomers, retirement bubble.
Is this why the Fed came out and they said we're going to change the way we calculate inflation? Because all of a sudden they wanted 2% inflation. They've been saying this for a very long time. And then all of a sudden they said, oh, you know what? We're going to start changing the way we look at inflation. Is it because they know that inflation is coming and they need to tell a different story about what's happening?
They want to get people thinking that, right now we've been in a disinflationary environment, believe it or not. And so when that happens, and if that gets locked in like happened in Japan, then people tend to not spend because they're waiting for something to get cheaper next week. And what the Fed's trying to do is create an environment where it's saying, hey, see, prices aren't going to go down. So it's okay to spend your money. In fact, we'll throw some money at you, just like they did the whole COVID stimulus thing, where they basically double paid minimum wage workers. That was all part of it to get spending into the system. And so that's what they want to do. They want to keep asset prices from falling, consumer prices from falling. And because all the tax revenue and all the pension require prices being stable to slightly inflationary. So that's the game they're going to play. And look, they're likely to be successful at it, Dave. It's going to be painful in some areas. And as long as food prices don't become intolerable, they're going to stay on this plan.
And how will this affect the precious metals market like gold, silver, and even Bitcoin?
Favorably. So when you have this thing where they're suppressing the real rate of interest, and you'll have that means that gold, silver, precious metals get a natural bid from that. But we're going to have a good guy with this too. So, you have copper, palladium, platinum, you have uranium, silver, and gold. All those metals are going to do well going forward, because we're also having a shift. I know you were going to ask me talk a little bit about the petrodollar. There's a shift going on now from what we call petro-based economy to electric-based economy, so that you're going to start seeing a shift over to natural gas. You'll see a shift over to nuclear. Obviously, the renewables are there, and they take different metals and some of them are precious metals like palladium, platinum, silver are all used heavily in this new world. And then you have copper to go with it. And so all of those miners that produce those things are going to do extremely well. And so that's where we've been playing, and we see no reason why that's not going to continue next 3 to 5 years.
So what's very interesting is that the mainstream media, they've been talking about how the market's going to come down and how it's going to crash eventually, because they just continually say this. We didn't see any of this. We've just seen the market move up. We've seen precious metals move up. We're seeing a lot of V recoveries in the real estate market, in retail, in GDP. I mean, we're seeing the opposite of what they're saying. Through all of this, how did your algorithms deal with what the mainstream media was saying and what was really going on?
Yeah, I mean, our system doesn't really look at the news, so all we see is buying pressure and selling pressure. And so we had a blip coming out of the end of summer into the first week of September, and our system noticed that, so we were able to trade that pretty effectively. And then we're right back into it again this week. We're basically across the board on Monday, we saw buying pressure across broad parts of the economy. I'm talking about the financials were going up, biotech started going back up, the precious metals were holding value, uranium was going up, copper was going up. Our system saw all that. So what we tend to do is not look at the news, Dave. So we just simply look at the algorithm. And I shot you a chart just to show you, this is Sorrento, and it's less of a brag, but just to show you how this thing, if you just forget anything else and you just look at the oscillation from our algorithm and you just simply buy it, and then when it starts to roll over, or use whatever stop methodology you personally like to use, you hop off and you wait for it to come again. And that stock personally, and today it went up even more after I printed that chart for you. We're in it, and I mean it's just tremendous. And that's not just that. I mean, every stock that we trade has an oscillation to it. We just trade the oscillation. So we really don't care about the news. We're interested in it, but if the indicators say buy, we have a saying, we say see trade, take trade. Don't listen to the news. And it does well for us. And so we just grinding right through. We don't have too many highs, not too many lows, and our system just chugs along, and it works really well.
And for those people who have never been in trading, who know nothing about trading whatsoever, and they've always wanted to get into trading, do you have any type of specials or anything where people can get involved and try to understand how this whole works?
Yeah, we do. So we have if you go to TradeGenius Academy.com or TradeLikeAGenius.com and just go and check out, we put together basically 6 bundles, depending if you're a new trader or you're advanced trader, if you like to trade cryptocurrencies or if you like to trade stock market. And we even have advanced rooms, and we have special algorithms to trade futures that do extremely well as well. And you can just go ahead and select which one works for you. And how we do it, Dave, is that we just don't throw signals out there. We just don't throw training out there, but it's an integrated approach. So we have our algorithms that our clients have access to. We teach you how to use those indicators so that you can effectively trade with them. But we also have chat rooms running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then we also provide trades. So every day I'm putting trades out there, as well as you can trade whatever you want to trade based on what the signal. And the signal allows you to actually, on your own, create alerts. So you could trade things that I don't even trade and make money. And then, but every day I'm giving trades too, so people can see how well it works and also take advantage of the stuff that I'm trading too. So it works really well. And we pre-discounted everything for your listeners, 65% off, and they can just go ahead and select the bundle that they like. And what we charge for the service is nothing compared to what you'd get out of it. I mean, if you just followed half of those Sorrento trades, you would you'd probably pay for like 5 years worth of the service. So it's pretty modestly priced compared to the value that you get out of it.
Great. I'll put all the links at the bottom of the video, so if people are interested, they can just click on it, go right over. I wanted to ask you about the World Trade Organization, because the World Trade Organization just ruled in favor of China in regards to the U.S. tariffs. Do you think the U.S. is going to make a move away from the World Trade Organization? We know during the pandemic, Trump pointed out the WHO and said, okay, we're defunding, we're moving away from the WHO. Do you think the same thing is happening right now?
Yeah, without a doubt. So, these other countries, they like to, they set the rule book up and then they redefine what they call whatever they call their things. So like in Europe, they have a way in which they protect their businesses that don't necessarily violate the WTO rules. China does the same thing in which way they manipulate it. And because we're a legal-based society, they try to hammer use the law against us. But Trump pretty much just said, hey, we have a right to manage our own economic affairs. And we think China's violating these rules. And we're going to manage it through tariffs. And if they don't like it, basically they can lump it. So I think Trump gets his second term. WTO is no longer.
So you think he's getting rid of, I mean, a lot of these organizations are globalist organizations. It seems like he's getting rid of one at a time here. And it seems that, I know during his UN speech, he says globalism doesn't have a future. It seems that he's removing everything the globalists have done and they don't have a future. Do you see that also?
I do. And I mean, pretty bold on his part. And so, obviously he needs a second term, but I think all these global agencies are going to get at least defunded from the United States. And we're simply going to ignore these WTO rulings. What people don't realize, the United States holds all the cards because we've been importing so much for so long. And what we export, people absolutely need. If they, we mostly it's foodstuffs and some interesting high tech. And so it's not like, I could buy my washing machine from another country. I don't need you, America. Well, guess what? We import those too. So then we could play countries off of each other. So I think we're in good shape. And I think this national defense thing where we're now going to bring, systemically important industries back into the United States. We're basically defunding globalism by defunding world trade. And I think that's that's secular too. And the rest of the world is gonna follow suit. Look what England's doing to Europe. I mean, Europe is at a disadvantage to England. Europe's at a disadvantage to the U.S. China's at a disadvantage to the U.S. Europe and China are going to go to war with each other economically because they both have the same systems and they were using it against us. Well, we hopped off. So you're going to see some really interesting dynamics between Germany and China, coming up. So we're in good shape. As long as we don't do anything stupid politically, like vote the wrong way in November, I think the plan's going to work.
Yeah, and if you add on top of all of that, the normalization in the Middle East, where Trump is working with United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and the other countries, and they're all signing this Abraham Pact where they're having normalization between all these different countries with Israel and others. We also have Trump ending the endless wars in Syria, Libya, Lebanon, bringing the troops home from Afghanistan. Now, the central bankers, the deep state, they use this to keep their entire system going, the petrodollar system. Trump now is removing all of this, removing the wars, removing conflict. Is this a setup to get rid of the petrodollar?
Yeah, I think once the United States became independent in energy production, the petrodollar is really not really a thing for us anymore. So it's more important that the dollar itself remains the reserve currency. But I think you're right. I think you're seeing people are picking sides. I think the Arabs are picking the side of the West, where the Iranians are picking the side of Asia, and you got, and that's just, to India, right? So then you have India to the east are all trying to wrap their arms around the Australian centric model. So yeah, I think, that the Arabs they're smart people. They know that oil is diminishing as a consumable. We're going to an electric kind of future, which is using different energy, and they're not going to have the money they used to have, nor the influence, nor the ability to wage war. And so I think they made lemonade, and this artificial, conflict that they created between the Jews and the Arabs in the Middle East is breaking down. Behind the scenes, those people traded and did commerce, but they could never admit it. Now they're just making it open again, and it's a really interesting dynamic if it holds. Arab money and Jewish technology, pretty potent combination, and if you remove wars from that, and the United States can trim back on what they're spending on defense and shift that into R&D and some other things, then I think this is all really good. And so I'm actually pretty excited about it. As long as it holds up and it's not some sort of Trojan horse, I think it's a great thing. And that's why I think the generals hate it, because if you think about it, Dave, where else does the United States need to fight? Russia's not really an enemy in that standpoint. That war would last a week. We're not going to go to war with China. And nobody else is really our enemy. Iran's out there, but I think that's until the mullahs roll over, and and I think the Iranians will try to reintegrate as well. So, I think it's great. As long as it's not some sort of a Trojan horse, but I don't think it is. I like it. I think it's going to bode well for the world.
I think so too, and I think it's Trump is positioning all of this to move us away from a system that was created back in the 70s onto something completely different. Now, it might be backed by gold, it might be something else. Don't know exactly yet what it's going to look like, but it seems like he's putting everything into position. The question I have for you is, as these countries, as they, there's no wars, there's no pressure from the U.S., and they're allowed to sell their oil, not using the U.S. dollar anymore, where they can use other currency to sell the oil. How will this affect the economy moving forward? Because wouldn't a lot of these reserve currencies that these countries are holding, won't they come back to the U.S.?
Yeah, look, as world trade collapses, the dollar actually gets stronger, because we had to produce dollars to support our import habits. And so that was actually creating an excess of dollars around the world. But as that rolls up, you're not going to need as many dollars out there, and so the dollar is going to get stronger. And number two, we're still the number one military in the world. And number three, everybody speaks English. And number four, it's already well established. What's going to supplant the dollar for a trading currency, right? Nobody trusts the yuan. The euro is going to be gone in 10 years. That whole project's going to implode. England's not big enough. So, basically, and Japan's not big enough. So the dollar is going to be the trading currency for this foreseeable future. That doesn't mean there's no room for gold. It doesn't mean there's no room for Bitcoin. Those are tremendous non-bank correlated assets that people are going to want to have to hedge. And I think that's where the hedging is going to happen, Dave. I think those other currencies are going to be in deep weeds. And then I think you're going to see the dollar, you're going to see gold, you're going to see Bitcoin are going to be where people are going to want to transact and where people are going to hold as collateral. And in China, in fact, what's happening in China is that most people can't afford gold there, so they're starting to hoard copper. So, that's how weak the economic system in China is, that they're forcing people to have commodity collateral now. Farmers need to pledge their pigs manufacturers need to pledge copper. They don't even trust their own currency with it inside of their own trading regime. So the dollar's here for a long time, but I think what you said earlier about will there be some sort of gold back? I think they're going to reprice gold to offset world debt here going forward. I think you and I talked about this before. I wouldn't be shocked. You wake up one day, it'll be kind of like a Roosevelt kind of a thing where they're going to say, well, gold is now this price, and by the way, you can come to our desk and take the gold at that price. But I'm talking multiple tens of thousands of dollars for gold, that kind of repricing. I think that's the kind of reset that's going to come. And I think you're going to see gold continue to float. My predictions were, that we hit them for 2020. 2021 is $2,900 for gold and $45 for silver. And the way they're spending money, that's probably going to be on the low side. And they decide to do a reset, then I'm off by a factor of 10. I think it'll be that much higher.
Bob, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people get to your site and sign up?
Yeah, go to TradeGenius.com. You can call us, you can chat with us, you can email us, or go to TradeGenius.academy.com to take you to the same place. And check us out also Saturday to take advantage of the pricing. And I think you'll find it a great deal. And I think we'll really be able to help you, make money really every day in the stock market.
Great. I'll put all the links at the bottom of the video. Once again, thank you very much for being on the Spotlight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.